Thanks for having me, Matt. We love the RevOps co-op community and excited to do this session today on this new category that's emerging. I'm going to get into kind of my more background here in a second, but I used to work at this company called Lattice. I ran marketing there and stumbled across this idea of sales deal rooms as a helpful way to help our sales process, and didn't even realize like what to call this thing at the time. I thought of it as this like private microsite that our sellers would use, but it's amazing how much this category has exploded. I think especially over the last year. If you're on LinkedIn, which I assume a lot of people on this call are, like I see sales deal room stuff pop up all of the time from both ourselves. We try and get content out there, but also our competitors, and then also Gartner and G2 and these sort of more industry thought leaders are putting out content. And so I think it's a trend that's been rising. It's a category that's being created. And I've spent a lot of time trying to think through why is this the moment that sales deal rooms are having? And so I want to explain that a little bit today. And then we're going to get into like more of the technical setup and dive pretty deep. So I have some slides. I'm going to show you some example deal rooms and how to think about it. How does it connect to your CRM? But yeah, please interrupt me, ask questions. Matt's going to chime in with some questions, but I'm down to make this casual. So I'm going to start sharing my screen and we can get into it. All right, everything you need to know about deal rooms. So yeah, I joined this company called Lattice. It's an HR tech company as the third employee, first marketing hire, and it was a tremendous experience for me. I went from being the only marketer and really the only go-to-market person at zero in revenue, and I remember getting our first check in the mail to over 50 million in revenue. And we went from a one-person marketing team to a 20-person marketing team, a zero-person sales team to a 50-plus person sales team. And I learned a ton about sales and marketing, but also about RevOps. Like in that early stages, I was the RevOps guy. I was managing the lead routing and the CRM setup and all of those different things. And actually today at Doc, I am the RevOps guy as well. So I'm pretty good at setting up these different systems and how to think about it. And I think what's really fun for what I'm doing now at Doc is I actually get to build systems to actually help this profession and their go-to-market profession. What I really want to build at Doc is a solution that helps revenue teams. I think there's obviously this big shift in the industry from you had these fragmented teams of sales and customer success and marketing, and now it's all under the same revenue umbrella. And RevOps is obviously an example of kind of that industry trend. And what we're trying to build at Doc is a place for revenue teams to collaborate with each other and their customers. And one of the best ways to do that, we think, is a sales deal room, which we're going to get into today. But yeah, I mentioned this before, but I stumbled across this idea of Doc when I was at Lattice. I built basically a shitty version of Doc when I was there. There was this like private website that we would share with our customers, and it worked really well. Our sales reps made like 600 of these things. And I was like, okay, there's something here. Quit Lattice 3 years ago, started Doc, and today Doc has like over 250 customers, and I won't read the customer list to you, but it's working well. And we really feel that product market fit, and we really feel this trend in the industry. I think when I started 3 years ago, no one even knew what a deal room was. No one was like really coming to it. They're like, oh, I'd have to really explain the idea. And today people come to us and say, hey, I'm looking for a deal room. And I think I'm going to try and get into why that's the case today. So yeah, here's the agenda. We're going to get through it. Okay, so we frame this webinar as Gartner put digital sales rooms at the top of their hype cycle. So Gartner publishes these hype cycles. If you don't know, it's a way to show where technology is in that like technology adoption curve. I forget all the things, innovators, early majority, like that sort of thing. If it's at the top of the curve, it's starting to move from the innovators to the early majority, right? I think I'm probably messing that up, but you get the idea, right? It's becoming a very popular piece of software. You can see other things here, like product-led revenue applications are also there. And then you can see things coming down the hype cycle, right? Like generative AI for sales and stuff like this. This is like a good way to say what's hot and trending. And it was really interesting to see digital sales rooms here. And I was pleasantly surprised as someone who's thinking about this space a lot to see somebody like Gartner's confirm what I was feeling in the market. My one problem is I hate the word digital sales room. I am really trying to change it to sales deal room. I just think digital sales room is silly. So let's all change that together. Okay, let's get into it.
I'd love to see what a physical sales room.
Yeah, like exactly. Aren't we? Yeah. And we've joked too, okay, is the future like a VR sales room, or we have like, it's so silly. Yeah. But yeah, digital sales room, stupid. And we'll get into this a little bit today, but like the incumbent providers, like a Seismic, HighSpot, Showpad, these players, they had this concept of what they called a digital sales room, but it's very different than what this modern application looks like, which we'll get through today. All right, so why are deal rooms trending? I think this is no surprise to everyone, but the selling environment has really changed over the last couple of years. We went from this crazy ZERP, go, go, go environment where it was grow at all costs, invest in your sales team, unlimited resources, to this world where we are forced to do way more with less. We have those same big goals as a sales organization, but we have smaller teams, smaller support, revenue, ops teams, and it just gets trickier. And to make it even worse, we have these distributed teams now, which are harder to train and ramp, difficult to get visibility, difficult to maintain your CRM hygiene. It is just much different world we are all living in today. And then on the buyer side, there's just much more increased budget scrutiny, right? Every deal feels like it requires CFO approval. People are reducing their software stack. Me and Joey, who's our head of sales, always talk about how a 6K deal feels like a 50K deal, because even those small deals like require multiple stakeholders and buy-in, and people have just been burned by software in the past with bad implementations and things like that. And so the world of selling has really changed. And this is no surprise to anyone, but buyer journeys are getting more and more complicated and taking longer. And so I always love this chart from Gartner that kind of goes through all the different steps. And it is such not a linear process. There was this whole like predictable revenue engine that we all tried to create over the last 10 years where it was, we're just going to send our sequences and then people are going to get in and do this really linear progression. And that is not how it works at all. Sorry to break that news to you. It is this roundabout thing that takes months and different people and different touch points. And it is a messy journey that is really hard. And to make matters worse, sales teams only have a tiny fraction of time in that buyer journey to actually interact with the buyers. So this is a stat from Gartner as well, that like buyers only spend 17% of their total buying time interacting with all of the sales teams. So that's you and your competitors. And so you as a seller only have, let's say, 5% of their entire time. And the rest of that time, they're talking to other people. They're collecting information out there in the world. They're asking questions in communities like RevOps Co-op, what they should buy. They're looking at G2, right? Your time as a seller is really small. And that changes, I think, the mindset that a RevOps team needs to have of how do we maximize those interactions? How do we maximize the data we're collecting from there and so on and so forth. And additionally, what buyers want has really evolved. So this is some great research from G2. And what buyers want today is they care about the sales experience. They want to make sure that you're answering actually all of their questions, that you're listening to them, that it's personalized to their needs, that you as the seller are showing that the content you're sharing actually helps to solve their problem or shows that, hey, I'm the seller, I'm the expert. And they want it to be consistent. They don't want to be searching through email and going to all these different places. They want to feel like they have a destination that they can go to find the information that they need, that they can share to those big buying committees that they're dealing with. And they want to work with companies who feel authentic and feel like a brand that they actually want to work with. And I think these things were like honestly always true, but we were able to get away with it as a sales and revenue industry for a long time in that ZERP era. And today we are going back to the basics of sales and driving revenue, where you need to be really personalized and really care deeply about what your buyers want. And I would make the argument that the existing solutions out there in the market, like the previous decade of solutions, were really focused internally. RevOps and sales enablement was all about the seller, right? It was how do we find the content? How do we train the seller? Because if we train the seller better, then they're going to do their Sandler or Medic process and we're going to close more revenue that way. Or I'm sure the favorite topic for all RevOps people is storing customer data and let's keep your CRM up to date. And we are crazy about keeping the CRM up to date in the belief that, okay, this is going to drive more revenue in the future. And I totally see the argument of that, of, hey, you have clean data, then we can make better decisions and all of that. And I've definitely been the RevOps person. Go clean up your CRM. But it is just too internally focused is the trend. And we as an industry need to be more focused on the buyers, right? The relationship between a seller and a buyer. And if you figure that out, that's what actually drives the revenue. And I think we should need to orient more in that world. And these things are all still really important, but we should focus more on the buyer side. And so I would make this argument that we need to shift, and this is a trend I'm seeing, that shifting from this world of just sales enablement to more buyer enablement. How do we really support the buyer relationship out there? How do we focus more on what they want and think about a revenue process from the buyer and work backwards, as opposed to starting from the seller and working to the buyer? And so I think this is like a big mindset shift that needs to happen out there. And so what is buyer enablement? I think of it as really simply, it's just how do you make it really easy for your buyer to buy, right? What are those things that you can do in your sales process that make it easy for them to buy, to match with their buying process, to give it to what they want, to make those. And so what does this actually mean in practice? It means listening to your buyer, helping them reach their goals, right? This is why qualification, again, is so important. How do you map your buyers' problems and goals to your solution? How do you create these business cases alongside your champions? How do you potentially recommend a competitor because it might be a better fit? Like you need to be really honest as a seller to when you're working with these different buyers. And again, it's also about supporting the buyer research, right? Creating different collateral to help answer those different questions, being upfront and transparent. And then obviously there's this big trend of people want to try before they buy. They've been burned by software in the past. So that's why product-led growth has become the new wave. But even if you're not a PLG company, there's more demand for POCs and free trials and demo recordings and demo sandbox. Like people want to really get a sense of the product. And all of these trends in the industry, I think, have led to deal rooms being created and becoming a thing. Because deal rooms, as we walk through it, and all those things I just were talking about, fit really perfectly in this world of buyer enablement and this modern wave. And it's really a win for both the buyers themselves and the sellers. It makes buyers' lives easier as they're searching and thinking about software. But just as importantly, it helps make the sales process more structured, more repeatable, and faster for the sales reps. Yeah.
You mentioned like got me thinking when you were talking about the shift from sales enablement to buyer enablement. I think again, like if you look at enablement, it's kind of like RevOps, right? Like you said, you may not have a dedicated RevOps person, like you own the RevOps responsibility at Doc. And so I think sales enablement or enablement is one of those same things. If you don't have a named enablement person, like that responsibility still exists somewhere. It's just a matter of who has it. So I'm curious, if you look at sales enablement, buyer enablement, what have you seen or do you have any opinions on? Does that fall within, call it the RevOps kind of charter scope of responsibilities? Should it not? Are there lines to draw? Is it like, how should people be thinking?
Yeah, I think it really depends on like your company size. Like Lattice did not add sales enablement, until we were like a couple hundred people, honestly. And we had a RevOps function. Brian Struby did a fantastic job leading it. And it's like sort of me and him, like product marketing, wearing my product market hat, and RevOps working together on enabling the sales team in obviously working with the sales managers. And so it depends on company size, right? In the earlier days, it's going to rely on honestly your frontline sales managers and your sales leaders. And then usually I think companies are hiring RevOps before they hire sales enablement. I think they should if they're not. And so the RevOps person is supporting the systems and data and the structure behind these different programs, whereas the sales managers are helping coach the reps and think through this mindset, because it is a mindset shift, right? It is less like, how do I get the deal done as a seller, and how do I actually authentically go and help this buyer and spend a little bit more time on the business case and a little bit more time on answering this question as opposed to this super transactional sale. So I think it honestly, this mindset shift falls on multiple people. It is not just you're going to create, I don't think you're going to go hire buyer enablement people within the company, maybe at a really big company, but it is a mindset shift for both marketing, the sales function, and then RevOps people who are going to, I know we'll get into this a little bit, of how do you set up the systems and the structure that make buyer enablement possible.
Yeah, makes sense. And again, like you mentioned, if 15% of a buyer's time is spent with all of sales, right? All the conversations, even if you can get 100% of that 15%, that still means that in order for deals to get done, 85% of decision making, right, is happening outside of those things that you've trained your sales team to do. So it's like, why would you not focus on how you can help address that 85%?
Yes.
Because anything you can do there will obviously have a huge impact.
And I think of this as simplifying. If a RevOps cares about the data, right? It's all about the data. How do I get more data in the sales process that I can use to better improve my sales process and fill my reports and my dashboards and my forecasts and all of these different things, and then or go hire more reps if we have better data. And deal rooms are an amazing way. Out of that 5% of time, you have to work with a buyer to actually get more data and more information about what's actually happening. As a VP of marketing, I was so frustrated with I would be making and doing all this stuff for the sales team, sitting with the RevOps team and trying to figure out like what's actually happening in the deal cycles, and you're piecing through emails and looking through opportunity stages, but that only tells you so much. And deal rooms, and we'll get into this, actually tells you what's happening within each of those stages. You have qualified to buy and proposal and verbal and all these different things, but a lot's going on in there. And we've been blind to what's going on in there as an industry. And this, I think, gets close to solving that problem. And If you think back to that G2 slide I showed you before, you could just flip that around and that is what a deal room is, right? And this is a GIF of walking through a doc deal room, but deal rooms provide this consistent buyer experience. It is beautifully personalized to the buyer. It could be as simple as just a logo personalization or as complex as a business case and custom demos and different things like that. It's a destination for buyers to go, just one link where they can go to find everything they need. And there's no re-explaining. It's all there. And then the best part is when you're working with a champion, they can just share the link with other people. And it's a great way for them to work with their buying teams. And it's a way for you to sell through the champion and for you as the RevOps organization to get data on, hey, did the buyer actually share it with the CFO? Did they share it with the security team? Did they share it with their manager? You're actually able to see that in real time that people are engaging in your sales process. And all of that can inform your sales forecast or change your coaching methodologies and things like that. And then on the seller side, which shortens the sales follow-up time, which is awesome. It's just a template that you duplicate and send, and your buyer's like, oh, wow, you actually put a lot of work in. And no, you didn't. Actually, it was less time than writing your follow-up email. All of the benefits of the deal room on the buyer side lead to higher close rates. One of our customers, Nectar, actually increased their close rates by 31% using Doc, and which is cool. But I think what's honestly, if you go read the case study on our website, like they actually say that the amount of times that somebody checks out the deal room was perfectly correlated to whether the deal was going to close. You can get a sense of a deal is going to close because they keep going to the link and checking it out, and you can feel that velocity. And we have a Slack integration where it's like, all right, and like me as a CEO now, I'm like, okay, this one feels like a good deal because you can see how actually engaged they are in the buyer. And the reverse is also true. Those buyer intent signals, if you send one of these links over and no one checks it out, it's a great signal that they're probably not going to buy your product. Yeah. If they're not going to click a link, they're probably not going to buy your product. And you as a seller, you need to go re-engage them or move on to a better prospect. And so the data that you get from a deal room is something that all sales reps, I think, really love.
Yeah. And like having flashbacks from, I'm sure, like if you think about if you don't have access to something like this, it's okay. What happens today when you're not using things like this? And I bought a bunch of software in the past, and how many times I can think where you ask sales reps, you're like, okay, send me this, send me that, send me this other thing. Then you as a buyer, you create like your own slides or your own like Jira page or like your own Notion page. And then you start sharing that around. And again, all that stuff is invisible to you, the seller. But the other thing is that's now another hurdle that you need to get me over. I need to be like invested enough to be like, I do want to get this approved. I'll create the things to do it, right? And I've had to do that how many times? And there's probably a lot of times where I'm like, maybe on the fence or like, I'm just like, it's just so much work. You know what? Not worth it. And things don't happen then.
Yep. Yeah, and the other thing on the same topic is oftentimes your champion doesn't explain it the way you want them to be, like the right way to explain it. They don't quite get the value. We do a thing in our sales process where we'll say, hey, champion, tell us what you're going to say to your boss, essentially. Like, how are you going to articulate the value here? And one of the best things with the deal room is you could have like the worst champion ever, but as long as they just share the link, like the messaging and the value is all on brand to actually what you do. And it's not just what your bad champion sort of story that they made up in their head is. So it's like a way for you to also like have that consistent message that you can like not just rely on this game of telephone with your champion. And then for really good champions, it's a place where you can co-build your business case together and it feels like you're on the same team in a way that's really professional. It is not just a Google Doc or Google Sheet that feels like you're treating them like someone on your team. No, this is a place that feels really professional and buttoned up and makes you look good as a seller. Sales rooms also make enablement easier. I'm not going to spend too much time on this point, but the cool thing about it is you basically can build your whole sales process in one place. And it's a way and a vehicle for you to refine your sales process. If you use deal rooms, you could actually have a rep doing perfect follow-up on day one, the first day that they start. They might not be able to talk on the phones. They might not be able to talk about your product. They might not even know what they do, but they can duplicate a template and send it over email. And it's a really great way to ramp reps and distribute content and different things like that. And they also help with the sales to CS handoff. I think this was something that was surprising to me and I didn't think about when I first started building Doc, but actually half of our customers today use us pretty exclusively for customer onboarding. Like we power all of Loom's enterprise onboarding as an example. And we've invested a lot into project management functionality. It started in mutual action plans and sales, but it really drifted into proof of concepts. And there's so many sales process, maybe consumption based, but the onboarding actually starts in sales and then it drifts into onboarding, like official onboarding. And so it's a great place for you to see a actual customer record of engagement. Where were they last left on their setup and different things like that. So your handoff notes, POCs, it's a great place to transfer that as well.
Yeah, you mentioned, so yeah, it's interesting, right? It's in the title of, and again, the title you don't like, but like digital sales rooms, right? So it's like sales room, right? It's not an onboarding room or a CS room. But so yeah, it got me thinking, what are maybe some of the common and then maybe uncommon ways that folks can leverage deal rooms? So we obviously talked about for the sales process, and you gave some examples of how your own customers are doing that. And then naturally getting into onboarding. That's another place where like folks again can get super messy, emails going back and forth. What are some of the ways that RevOps and revenue operators should be thinking about maybe the category and again some of those common or uncommon use
Yeah,
cases?
it's super interesting. It's a question I wrestle with all the time as someone like building in this world. Is so we actually internally we call it a workspace. We call it a client-facing workspace, and sort of our tagline is a client-facing workspace for sales, onboarding, and renewals. Because yes, the industry is calling it a sales room or digital sales room and things like that. But for us, we think of that as just one of the many use cases for the software we've built. And we've actually built this like underlying primitive that's essentially like a fancy private website builder with analytics and all these different like widgets and things you can add. And I'll show you an example here in a little bit. But that's how we've thought about it. And then, yeah, so you can use our workspace as a sales room. And then within that, there's a bunch of different options. Like you can use it as an ABM style landing page. Anybody who's on this call right now or didn't show up or is going to get a doc link and use it as like a webinar follow up. It's like it can be used as like a campaign page, or what we've been talking about today is more like the traditional sales room of mid to bottom funnel, thing like that. But then there's the whole onboarding world. And within onboarding, you can use it for high touch enterprise, sales. You can use it for more scaled customer success, like Loom, going back to that customer example. They use a lot of us for one to many customer education, embed a bunch of Loom videos around use cases, sending into different things. And then another use case is around renewals. So it's just the deal room. It's the same sort of primitive, but you're using it for a renewal use case to close the deal at the end of the customer journey. Then the last one is more just general project management. Doc actually works with a lot of agencies and consulting firms where, it's not quite sales, it's not quite onboarding, but maybe you're building a website. Maybe you're working on some strategic project with a consulting firm. Maybe you're doing a RevOps initiative, right? You can actually use this as a client portal to manage everything. And I think that's maybe a little unique to us and a little unique to maybe modern sales rooms. If you look at what Seismic and HighSpot and sort of the incumbent solutions have, that you can't do some of those use cases here, but we've really focused on how do we build a primitive that can be multi-use case. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at today. I think buying signals are one of the top things I see all the time on LinkedIn. Like every single person is posting about buying signals, and there's all Koala and Common Room and Pocus, and I'm sure I'm forgetting, but it's all about how to get your buying signal strategy together. And I think what I find interesting about that is it's all focused on top of funnel. And that is very important. You want to generate pipeline. Like I am a marketer by trade. I think a lot about pipeline, but I think most of the buyer signal discussion really happens about the top of the funnel and how do we use that to get new leads. And I think deal rooms, and right, whether you're using a deal room or not, but I think you as a RevOps person need to think more about the mid and bottom of the funnel. How do I get more signals of how engaged my prospects are in the buying process? And again, this is like the stuff that's happening between the opportunity stages, right? And it doesn't have to be deal rooms. Like on this slide, I listed out a bunch of different like signals that we can produce, but it could also be, hey, they're attending a customer dinner, or they met with the CRO at their company or the CEO, right? Like a senior meeting. And so as an industry, we need to think more about what are those mid bottom of the funnel signals, because I think that'll lead to more predictable revenue, better sales forecast, better coaching for reps. And I'm obviously biased, but deal rooms I think are a great part of kind of that buying signal strategy. All right. So that's a little bit about why deal rooms are important. Hopefully I have convinced you that you should like at least consider this category of software. I want to get a little into the nitty gritty around like the software itself. And so we're going to spend 2 sections here on evaluating and then implementing deal rooms. And I'm going to show you some examples as well as we get into it. But I think it's important to note that not all deal rooms are the same. And there's been an evolution. And so people call deal rooms different things. And actually, I was just talking to someone last night and they're like, oh, Rattle has a deal room, like the RevOps tool. And their deal room is a Slack channel where you talk about the deal. And so it's very different from what we're talking about today. So as an industry, we're trying to define this term and it means different things. So keep that in mind as you look at it. But here's how I see the category as someone who's trying to build and compete with all these people. is that there's the content repositories and sales enablement player, Seismic and HighSpot. I always think of as sort of the two big ones. They do a lot of things and they're amazing platforms. You can host your content there, do your sales training and enablement there, but they also have a thing called a digital sales room. And their DSR, and I'm sure they're evolving it, but has usually been this like static content repository. It is not about collaboration. It is not about project plans or proof of concepts or some of the things I'm talking about. All those use cases are not quite possible there. It's really about, hey, here's a website with some content on it, how I think about them. I would argue most people are doing the repurposed internal tools. Pretty much everyone I talk to has some Notion page or Google Doc or Google Sheet with their mutual action plans, or they're trying to use ClickUp, or they're using slides and PowerPoint, right? Most people are using this as a way to organize the sales collateral and share information with prospects. So that's, I think, the most common one. Then there's the CPQ tools like DealHub, GetAccept, PandaDoc, amazing sales proposal tools. But they really think of it as getting the deal across the finish line. That last mile, it's less about the content at the beginning. Now there's a bunch of emerging DSR point solutions, Align, Flowlab, Trumpet, that take some of these modern primitives and start to really focus on the digital sales room, make them a little bit more collaborative, better analytics. They do a more sophisticated job than the incumbent players. And then there's some that are very more like mutual action plan centric. It is all about the steps to get the deal done and is way less about the experience and the content and different things like that. Not all created the same, and you should think about what works for you. And this is how I break it down of what's most important. How important is content management to me? Do I have an existing CPQ solution or not? Do I need it to embed in the deal room? How much customization do I want? Do I care about collaboration? Do I want to connect it to the onboarding process? What type of analytics and reporting? And each of the players in the space have different pros and cons related to all of these things. So where does Doc fit in? I think we think of it as we're building across all of those different fronts. Biased, but I think the best sales room solution in the market in terms of functionality and customization. We have this back-end content management system, a lightweight Seismic and HighSpot. We've built an order form solution in there that works for, I would say, smaller companies. But we've really invested into collaboration and project management because a lot of our customers are actually using us for customer onboarding. We have probably over-invested in the project management functionality that you need, which makes us a good solution for proof of concepts and different things like that in the sales process. But don't want to pitch it too much on Doc. And yeah, we work across the customer lifecycle. I think that's like our biggest unique value proposition. And when you think about these other tools, is we're, again, this client-facing workspace across all of these different components, and it's one place for a consistent, not just buyer experience, but customer experience. All right, enough about Doc. Let's talk about implementing deal rooms. So we talked a lot today. Hopefully you're interested in this category and slowly thinking about where to get started. I'm going to run through these quickly and then we'll get into some real live examples. But I think you should start no matter which provider you're working with, but it's all about your deal room template. This is where you should start the process. You do not want to give your reps a blank slate and say, just go use it. It is a template that you create that they're going to duplicate. And you should think about, there's like different parameters I talk to when I'm talking to sales leaders about this, but the main one is your segment. You should probably have different templates for your enterprise, mid-market, and SMB segment. Your enterprise segment's going to be more personalized. It's going to have a business case in there. You might want to hide pricing. You're going to give your reps more flexibility for personalization, whereas like your SMB segment is going basically zero personalization, no business case, or maybe a standard business case, right? It's going to be very transactional and programmatic. You're not going to customize this thing too much. And then there's all these other parameters that you might want to consider customizing. Product lines is a big one, different features, industry. Like for Doc, we hide and show based off if you're a Salesforce or HubSpot user, and I'll get to that. And you should think of your template as both the overall workspace, but also the pages within the deal room and also the sections within it. At least that's how it works within our system. So just start with your template if there's one takeaway here. And then you basically, when you're building out your template, you should map your deal room to your sales process. And so you should think about each of the little steps in your sales process. And this is going to be different whether you're enterprise, mid-market, SMB, depending on segment. But what are those different moments? And you should think through your template like this. And you importantly don't want to overwhelm your buyers with too much information up front. And so you want to slowly drip out information and create the content and the different things or moments here. And so think about your sales process, do some exercise like this, and then think through your deal room template and the different pages as part of it. So I'm going to show you an example deal room here. I'm going to show you a little bit of like how we use Doc at Doc, and I think it'll hopefully make this slide click a little bit more. All right, so this is an example sales deal room. This is actually one of the templates we use at Doc. So in this example, Doc is actually selling to RevOps Co-op. I thought that would be a good customer example. And you're looking at the client view. So this is what the client sees. They would see something like this, except for the stuff at the top. And there's different pages, right? And so the way we think about using Doc at Doc is that when we first meet somebody, it's really about just an introduction, right? Let's talk about your initial next steps. Let's show off our platform. Let's show our Meet Doc deck. But then the pages at the top are really just content focused. It is each of the segments of our business: sales deal room, customer onboarding, content management, case studies, integrations. We're trying to answer some of those very basic questions that people might have, right? And we show off our case studies and GIFs and slides, and you can put whatever you want in here, and you can start small, right? You might not, I didn't have all these GIFs and videos when we first started Doc. You can literally just be your product line and then a video, like one video and things like that. And then, so this is usually what we do, like post demo follow-up, and then we'll embed a gong recording in here as we get going. But within Doc, I'm moving to the editor now. So this is the internal side. This is where the sales reps can actually control the experience. And the way it's structured is you have those pages at the top and you have these different sections. And we think of it as like slides in a slide deck, except it has multimedia content in here, and you can add pretty much whatever you want. So as you start to personalize it and work with your customers, you can add basic building blocks, pull in different widgets, embed pretty much anything that can be embedded. And so as your customers have different questions, you can customize it, add info, add your Loom video, add your Gong video, different things like that as the sales process unfolds. But going back to this slide of mapping it to your sales process, we think of it as like the pages at the top. It's a combo of the pages at the top and then the sections you can think of as the way you map it to your process. So for us at Doc, we will do different things like build an example workspace in our sales process. And so we have a hidden page here, which we will show to a customer and link to their example, and you just click show. And once we build out and we hit that milestone in our sales process, we'll show it to them. Or once we try and avoid proof of concepts like everyone else. We just want you to buy off a demo and we have a free account. But if we get into a trial situation, we'll show the trial page. Or when we're ready to talk about recommendations and pricing, we'll show the pricing page and security and so on and so forth. And so we think about each of these pages at the top. And then let's say, hey, the customer doesn't care about onboarding, doesn't really care about content management. It's just a sales room deal. Maybe for integrations, they just use Salesforce, not HubSpot. So I'm going to hide these different sections. And so now when I make these changes, you can see this takes me 5 minutes, not even, because it's all pre-built. The workspace has changed. And so now it's a much more focused workspace based off what the conversations we're having with that customer. It's all about the sales deal room. We're not going to introduce customer onboarding as like this other thing that they might think about. And then now there's the stuff that's personalized to them. Hey, we're running a trial. Here's everything you need to know. Here are the people involved in the trial. Here's how it's going to work. Here's like the next steps. Here's the success criteria. Here's all the different steps to actually set up your users. Here's the training guide. And so you can see that we've created content that maps to each of the stages of our sales process. And then we think of it as just these pages at the top. When we're ready to talk about pricing, here we have our pricing stuff. So it's like this pre-programmed content that you have in here. Any questions so far? Just want to keep pausing and keep going, but anything come to mind for anybody?
What about the, I don't know, because again, we were talking about enablement a little bit. So I guess first I'm thinking of, before I ask questions about the buyer, thinking about the seller. So how, I guess maybe two scenarios. So one, let's say folks don't have a digital sales room product in place today. They're using an internal tool or maybe no tool at all. How do sales reps and maybe even your CS team, how do they typically respond to stuff like this? Because again, I don't know, take the CRM, for example. It can be hard enough to get your sales team to, like you said, keep accurate data and stuff in there. And now it's okay, you're giving me like one more thing that I got to use. Or maybe they don't look at it that way. But how do folks typically react? And then what are some maybe best practices or tips that folks can use to actually demonstrate why this is important and how it can actually help them sell more and sell better?
Yeah. So I've encountered like almost like two types of reps, I would say. There's some who are where have you been all my life? Oh my God, this is so cool. Like, how do I use this thing and get it going? And they are maybe the more creative, imaginative reps on their team, and they can come in here and set it up on their own. But I think those are few and far between. And there's usually like a couple of them hidden on the team. There's like the doers, and it was like Kevin Norman at Lattice was like early adopter and would just come in here and start using it. I would say a lot of reps though face the cold start problem of, oh wow, this is cool, I want to use it, but like where do I start? And I got to just close my deals fast, and I don't have time to do things like this. And so we think of it as, that's why we go back to that template-based approach. We like to bring in somebody who, it requires somebody who can help set up an initial template. And that can be a rep, that can be an enablement person, RevOps, marketing. Unfortunately, we haven't found a consistent thing on our side of who that person is, but we need somebody to do it. And so that's like step one, and we have templates within the product to help you do that. But I also think you can start really small. This has been a 3-year investment about creating content and things like that, but this can be a super simple deal room. It can literally just be a person, some next steps, and a video recording. It can be a 1-page thing. I just encourage, like when we do onboarding a doc, it's just send over your existing collateral, and we'll put it in here, and it takes like us five minutes to do it. So there's an interesting balance of whether the rep wants to do any work or how much, but that's why when we do full rollouts, it's all about the templates. Hopefully that kind of answers your question.
Yeah. And what about the folks who are on the receiving end of this? So customers, I imagine since hype cycle, things have been building, things like this might start to be more commonplace. But then, like you said, also there's a lot of different definitions of what a deal room is, a Slack channel versus content management space. How do most buyers react to this? And then again, like any best practices and how to roll this out truly is something new for you.
Yeah. I think the most common objection we get is, oh, will my buyer ever use this? And I think it's just a link. That's kind of when I come back. It's literally just a link, and everyone on the internet is down to click on a link. And they don't need a login. They don't need to create an account. There's nothing like that. And I think once a seller kind of gets over that initial apprehension, and I would argue if they don't click on a link, they're not going to buy your product. Yeah. The response from buyers is overwhelmingly positive. I get notes all the time about just a recording from a gong or something like that about, oh, wow, this is amazing, this is so professional, so on and so forth. And we actually, a big part of our lead flow is our customers coming in and being like, ooh, I want to use that tool. And there's been like, I don't know, 30,000 of these doc workspaces created, and people are checking them out all the time. I think it is overwhelmingly positive from the buyer side of things. But in terms of introducing with your customers, we think the best place to do it is like at the end of your demo call with them. It's a place to introduce next steps, talk about things, talk about where the deal is going to go, pull it up on the call live. It's a forum for you to have that conversation. And then it's your demo follow-up email is here. And then as the sales process evolves, you're always pointing back to the deal room. Like I actually have a slide in here. I don't think we're going to get to all of this, but you could do things like this. Hey, thanks for the questions about our Salesforce integration. I've added a page in our portal that walks through how the integration works. It's like the same things you're doing in the sales process, but you're just pointing back to that deal room, and it's this consolidated place. So you're not just sending information in silos. It's all going back into one place. And we've had all sorts of customers use Doc, from like Fortune 500, GE, to like small mom and pop restaurants. We even have one wedding planner who's using Doc. I've been surprised, like on the buyer side.
Along that line, so Tony asked this question on kind of tracking buyer engagement, and then also I was curious on the buying signals stuff and the analytics and what those look like. Naturally, you talked about the amount of engagements, the number of times people are clicking, how that directly correlates to essentially chances of a deal closing. But how should people be looking at those signals from sales deal rooms? And is there anything that may not be, call it obvious, that folks should be thinking about when it comes to new data that they're ultimately going to have that they haven't had before?
Totally. Here's what the signals look like. Before this webinar, I was putting some fake data in here, and so you can see in real time, like the customer engaging, right? Rachel, who doesn't actually work at RevOps Co-op, is watching all these videos and viewing the workspace, and we're tracking, right? Like, are they viewing the overall deal room? Are they checking which pages are they checking on? How much time they're spending? I don't know if there's comments. Which mutual action plan steps are they going through? And so we basically have a real-time feed here, real-time feed in Slack. We can push this data to your HubSpot record as well. We can push it to your Salesforce tasks as well. And so you can take these different buying signals and do a lot of different things with it. One that we released fairly recently, I think I have an example in here, is we can actually push it to Gong. So for your Gong sales forecast, if anyone's using that solution, you're able to see, okay, a common one is, did this deal get multi-threaded? Hey, my sales rep is saying this deal's going to close, but they've never actually gone through a security yet. They haven't actually looked at the proposal. You are 4 steps behind on your mutual action plan. Sales rep, I don't know if I believe you that this is actually going to close. And so you can use those buying signals to inform your sales forecast. The other thing, maybe more on a rep level, is you can see as a buyer is engaging, let's say Bob watched this onboarding video, it's a signal around what Bob is interested in, right? In the workspace, there's 6 different videos. There's some about onboarding and this use case and that thing, but it's a really good signal for the sales rep to craft their follow-up, to craft their business case, different things like that, to anchor it around what that buyer actually cares about. And I think that's all really important. I think one of the really cool things about Doc is around the business cases as well, which is becoming so important in today's new world. And you can set up these nice business cases like this, and it can be collaborative with your buyer, and they can leave comments, and they can actually edit it, right? It's like a Google Doc, but I would argue a little more professional. And you can share this business case with somebody and you can see, did the CFO read it or not? And that can really inform what you're doing. Some maybe more fancy stuff you can do with some of these signals is different workflows based off of it. I'm skipping out some of these slides, but within HubSpot workflows and then Salesforce, Flow Builder, basically all these events you can pipe in and you can look for different action plan steps that are completed. Maybe it's in your proof of concept, a specific milestone, or maybe it's, hey, if they interact with this piece of content, and then you can use those tools to set up different workflows based off that, whether it's stamping different records on your opportunity and different objects, sending emails to those systems. But we have a lot of companies who do that, right? It's like they check off this task in Doc and then they want to send some automated email to them or some alert to the senior leadership person that, hey, this mutual action plan is progressing, things like that. So hopefully that kind of answered your question, Tony.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's cool because when things like this happen, do this, right? Send this email or send this alert. You can also say, hey, when these things don't happen, right, do something else. So it's like you obviously can do a lot with the data that's getting collected when people are leveraging certain elements of the sales deal room. And then you can do a whole lot when in the absence of data or activity there as well, which again is nothing that you previously would have been able to do.
Totally. And you can see, I go back, like there's a deal, actually, I got distracted because I looked in Slack. I see a deal popping off in our Slack channel right now. And here, I'll show you. Actually, I can't show you that deal, unfortunately, but let me show you. I set up a fake one. Yeah, like you get these, you can pipe all these, I think you can see this, pipe all these alerts in here. And so you're able to see, okay, what Bob viewed and all the different things. And like in real time, this will just start popping off as like different people check it out. And it's like such a good signal for the rep and the managers, like whether that deal is actually going to progress. So definitely, and even as a CEO, I'm not directly working every single deal, but I love seeing it because I'm like, okay, I believe that this deal might come in this quarter. If I see it a lot, you know? Which is always funny. The forecast is a tricky thing. And then one other thing I wanted to just quickly talk about was your CRM obviously is such an important and critical part of your software stack. It's like where all of us in RevOps really think about. This is how I think about the relationship. Your CRM is your database layer. You are never going to share that with your customers. And a deal room and these workspaces is the collaboration layer. If anyone's building software here, there's the database and then the application layer. The deal room and these workspaces are the application layer. And the deal room is pushing the buyer activity and the customer activity back because it's client facing. And then from the CRM, you're pushing data to the deal room itself. And so, you can pull in and dock all the different fields from your CRM to pull it in, even help with that personalization at scale. And then we've done some things to try and fight the hygiene battle where within Doc, you can actually pull in your account and opportunity fields. And this is like a MEDEC process, right? But you could actually have all this here and actually bidirectional or sync or whichever way you want it back to your Salesforce or HubSpot records. So we're trying to help you fight that battle as well, because we think there's all this amazing interaction that's happening with the buyers, and as a RevOps industry, we're missing out on most of it. And so how do we do that is my call to action and what I'm really excited about with this product and just category. Whether you're doing this stuff in Doc or other tools, I just think this is such an important trend, especially in today's age of selling. Yeah, that's my end of my spiel. I don't know if anyone has any final questions and stuff, but hopefully this was valuable for folks.
No, that's very cool. And yeah, one of the things Danny mentioned too on again those alerts and pings is just the motivation, right? Like you mentioned, like you can feel that momentum building. And again, picture if you don't have that, like you instead of it being like maybe a gradual slope, it's like you're here and then they either like, okay, I'm ready to buy, and you're like, okay, now I'm up here, or it's I'm here and you don't hear anything, and then it's just
Totally. Yeah.
so yeah, it's a great way to just provide motivation to the
Yeah.
team as well.
Totally.
So in the last couple of minutes, curious on any, I don't know, any last thoughts or parting thoughts on this, and especially like we looked at the hype cycle curve and where things are with the category today. Things like AI and all these other new technologies have gone through that very quickly and are somewhere there now. So what do you see as like where things go from here? You think you're going to get your wish and the category will get renamed? Actually, and how do you see maybe things like AI impacting or not impacting the space in the category? Like where do you see things heading from here, especially for RevOps folks that are here listening?
Yeah. It's a really interesting question. I'm like, what's my biased answer, and what do I want
Yeah,
to
yeah.
see, and what will actually happen? Look, I don't think your CRM is going away for a long time. Maybe it slowly gets reinvented and agents become a thing, and you have these a lot of automation. But I think of agents and AI as a sort of a fancy way to do a lot of automation. What I would like to see is more and more people interact with their customers in like this professional way, in this new age way. And it's less about using your internal tools, your Google Docs and spreadsheets and slides and different things like that. And I would encourage more and more companies to, this is like the new age sales proposal, right? Instead of sending your PDF, you're going to send a deal room and you're going to send these interactive and collaborative workspaces. And in the same way Figma revolutionized the way people do design and made it more collaborative, I think of deal rooms and client workspaces as a similar trend for sales teams. I think the role AI plays, and I've actually been very proud we have not built any AI stuff yet at Doc, although we've been thinking about it and we have some good ideas. I think AI will help with the creation of these things, listening to what's going on in the sales process and actually updating the deal room for you on your behalf or suggesting edits. And then also helping make sense of the data and thinking and creating sense of the different signals and surfacing insights and different things like that. So I don't know. We'll see where it all goes. But yeah. And then there's all these like sales enablement tools. Like I think people have really bloated stacks and like overbuilt platforms and that are too focused internally, and I think you should focus more externally. And what are more tools for the buyer, not just the seller?
Yeah. No, and I like the approach you mentioned because again, it's your like especially with AI, it's rather than being like, oh, well, obviously we got to build that into our product. So how do we do that? What can we do? It's no, let's be thoughtful and intentional about it and start where you should start, which is like, what problem do our customers have that we can solve with maybe this new piece of technology? And like you said, maybe it's on the content creation part because that's what takes time. And anything that takes time is where there's friction, and friction is where mistakes happen, things don't happen. And so yeah, be thoughtful about that. I think makes a whole lot of sense. And the other piece I liked about what you said was like, you got to start somewhere, but you don't need to have everything and it doesn't need to be perfect. So if this is one of those things like this category in general, if this is one of those things that you're not using today, and maybe you're using a Notion or a ClickUp or Google Slides or Asana or whatever it might be, look at how you can just get started to enable your sellers to try something simple, right? It doesn't need to have those 5 different spaces that you mentioned with all of those different videos and all of those GIFs and all that documentation. Just start somewhere. And I really like the onboarding use case as well, because once you close a deal, right, like that handoff from sales to CS is the first impression that person, those people get as a customer of yours. And first impressions matter. And if you are using it on the sales side, on the CS side, like just think of how seamless that handoff will go, and you'll look like you have your shit together. And the other thing is like a lot of people don't, right? So like your buyers that have experienced that before, like you'll look really good by doing something relatively like simple and basic, because not a lot of other people are able to execute that in a seamless or efficient way.
Totally. And that was like the first insight of what got me excited about building Doc and why I worked at Lattice. It was just like, oh, it looked like we had our shit together. And it was nice and it felt different. And then I went down this path of, oh, it's collaboration and analytics and all this stuff. But at the very least, it's, oh, wow, they're professional. They care.
Yeah.
They took the time to put our logo. And that's like the very basic initial benefit
Exactly.
of this stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a funny magic trick.
Notice we said it looks like we have our shit together.
Yeah.
You have to have your shit together. You just need to appear.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. No one actually has their shit together. Yeah. Well,
right,
thank you so much for the chat. This was really fun today.
yeah, thanks, Alex. And to everyone out there, thanks for joining. Once you log off, you'll get prompted to fill out a 2-question survey on feedback from the event today. So please fill that out. But otherwise, top of the hour. So I will let you run, Alex. I will let everyone out there run, and I'll see you all on the flip side at the next one. So take it easy, everybody.